August 26th. New release. Whoa. But then, Sony acted with lightning speed to shut down a new exploit. Oh man. Sony really wants to stop this for some reason. Oh wow, Sony shut down the Vita exploit faster than, well, anything that's ever been done before. Man, they just don't want anyone to have fun. Just kidding. They didn't actually do anything at all. You can still use the firmware. Okay, so obviously we now know you can get custom firmware on 3.72, and you really have always been able to, but maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't found a good video tutorial to tell you how to do it, to walk you through everything. Maybe there's something that's confusing you. Well, here you go. Here's a video tutorial. If you don't want a video tutorial, you can just scroll through the GitHub like I'm doing right now, and it'll tell you literally everything you need to know. So I'm going to pretend you want the video tutorial. First thing, you need to download the actual firmware, H-Encore². Once you have that, you also are going to want to download QCMA, PS Vita image tools, and package to zip. A lot of these are on GitHub, so pretty easy to get. And then the third thing we're going to want is the vulnerable DRM free demo of Bittersmile. This is what we're going to actually use to activate this firmware. So I just throw all these into a nice little folder, and we can start from there. Now, if you are confused at all about how to download and install these, I'm going to walk through it just real quick. I'm going to try and make this video really fast, so I'm not going to stop a lot. You may have to pause, go back, feel free to ask me some questions. So QCMA, it's got a nice little installer. This is the only thing that's actually going to have an installer. It'll show you a Windows wizard, and it'll just go through and do everything. Now, you're going to want to go to releases for the PS Vita image tools, and down at the bottom I downloaded the Windows 64 version. Download whichever version you need, and then save for package to zip, hit releases, and then you're good to go. Next up, make sure you download the Bittersmile. It'll just pop up. I would go ahead and rename this. This is a bunch of gibberish, and we're actually going to have to be referencing the file name, so I'm going to call it demo, because that's what it is. You can call it Bittersmile if you want, or whatever, but I'm going to name it demo.pkg. We are going to be using this name in the future, so the name does kind of matter. Now, once you have all these things, go ahead and select your 3 zip files, and you can go ahead and extract them right there in our new Vita folder. We aren't going to need the zip files anymore, so you can just go ahead and delete those and clean up some space. Now, for our next part, we're going to need to use the terminal or command prompt. Now, you can either open it in and copy the address location for where our folder is, copy address as text, or you can just type in, edit the address, and type in CMD, and it'll pop it up and automatically populate the location, so it does it for that specific folder. Now you're going to want to just go ahead and copy and paste the info on the GitHub, which is package to zip. And we're going to change path of PKG to our actual file name, okay? Which, again, for this we have named demo.pkg. And then just go ahead and hit enter. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the package and it's going to make it into a nice little folder. It's going to unpack everything, and we'll be able to modify the files inside. Now, once it's finished, we'll have a new folder called app. We're going to want to go inside of this app, go to the next folder, and we're going to take everything in there and copy it. Then we're going to go to H-Encore app. There's a temporary game folder, weird name thing. Go into there, copy, and paste all that other stuff. So you'll have all those files plus the Vita_path text file. Now you can go back to that original folder, and we're actually going to take a file out of there and put it into somewhere else. It is technically like the same stuff as what we just copied, so you can take it from either folder, but I'm just taking it from the old one for clarity's sake. So you'll want to go into SCE_SYS, then we'll go to package, and we're going to want to grab temp.bin. We're going to be copying this over, We're going to want to go into our license folder, another weird temporary folder, and we're going to put temp.bin in this folder with the Vita_path text file. Now, on the GitHub, there's a name you're going to need to grab. We're going to be renaming this file, and we aren't just going to be changing the name, we also need to make sure that we change the extension type, okay? We're modifying the file, not just in name. So make sure that .bin is highlighted. This is very important. Once you have this, it'll be a .rif. This is how you're going to know you're changing it. If you change a file name extension, the file might be unstable. Do you want to continue? It's just saying, hey dude, you're doing some stuff. Is that cool? Yeah, bro, that's chill. That's how I talk to my computer, by the way. Now, for this next part, we're going to need to use QCMA. Now, QCMA, you're going to want to go ahead and before you hook anything up, you're going to want to check your settings. Now, the biggest thing we want to look at is CMA protocol selection. Make sure that's on the latest and use this version for updates, firmware 0.00. That just means it's going off the latest. We aren't using H-encore², so we don't need to worry about that at all. Now, actually hooking up your Vita is pretty simple in theory, but you may run into some snags. I've had to reset CQMA, I had to reset my Vita, and I had to reset my computer a few different times to mess with it just to make sure that everything connects. But essentially all you're doing is USB cable to your computer and to your Vita, and you're good to go. Again, you may have to tweak with it a little bit, but that's really all you need to do. So on here, go to your applications, hit browse, and this will show you what you have on your Vita, some of the files that's transferred over to the computer. And right here, we need to hit rename because we want to copy this ID, okay? So this ID is going to be different depending on what your setup is, but we need this ID to be able to modify our file. So once we have that, we'll open up a new page. Again, check the GitHub to find a link to this. Copy this in, and then we have a 64-digit code that we're going to need to save, and we're going to be using in command prompt. I'm going to go back to my Vita folder. I'm going to take everything except QCMA and my demo package and the app folder and just shove it in to the custom firmware folder, H-encore. And now we're going to be running command prompt in this folder. So go to the GitHub, there's 4 different lines. We're going to take PSV image -create. There's 4 different ones. Take the first part, copy it, then paste. Then copy your ID that you just got, paste it. We're going to be replacing this blank spot that it has on here for the IDs, which is your _key. You're going to be putting your key in for that 4 different times. If you want to open up a notepad and just go ahead and set it all up so you don't have to keep copying and pasting, and changing it on the fly, please feel free to do that if that'll make it easier for you. And you just hit enter and it'll run through and do its thing. Now, after you've done that 4 times, you can check and make sure everything's fine. So you should have in H-encore, go to the app name, and there should be 4 folders here above the SCE_SYS, okay? And that corresponds with all the different commands you put in. So there's app, app meta, license, and save data. If you went through all the commands, they should all be there and you're good to go on that. Now what you'll want to do is open back up that app folder in QCMA. You're going to copy over the folder, the PCSG, etc., etc. That folder, copy the contents over to your apps folder in QCMA, and then you're going to want to hit refresh database in QCMA. Now you need to make sure to connect your Vita back up to your PC and scroll through until you get to your apps, and the firmware will be right there on there, and you can just go ahead and transfer it over. Now this exploit is only a temporary exploit, okay? Every time you hard shut off your Vita or restart it or anything along those lines, you are going to have to rerun the firmware, and sometimes the firmware does fail. And by that I mean you go to run the actual firmware and it'll crash. That's normal, that's fine. You probably didn't do anything wrong. You just may have to try it a time or two. It's just the nature of the firmware. But once we're in here and you install it, we can go ahead and install Vita Shell, which will give us a lot more control over our system. And that's like pretty much all there is to it.